over which way it goes. I want to talk about Israel.
Yes. Yeah.
You just came back from Israel, and you told us a fascinating story offline that the Israelis and the Palestinian authorities both had a reason to sort of breathe a sigh of relief this past week over a botched missile attack against the Israelis.
Yeah, well, I sit on the Intelligence Committee, and so I took a trip to Israel last week, and while I was in the air, unbeknownst to me, there were 110 rockets that were fired from Gaza into Israel. This is significant. There are about 1 million people who were at risk, and we had something called the Iron Dome that was deployed. That's a missile defense shield. The good news is that that missile defense shield stopped the incoming rockets, and not one person lost their life. That was excellent. And I had met with the Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel. They were thrilled, obviously, that the Iron Dome worked, and the Palestinians as well were happy.
And explain to our viewers why the Palestinians were happy.
Well, because there's a new group that is kind of grown up in Gaza, and they actually have a backing and an affiliation with Iran, and it's called a new political Islamist jihad, and they're involved in trying to create more agitation rather than peace.
And destabilize the peace process. Joe, you have a question for Michelle?
Yeah, back to Obamacare. Is that okay?
Oh, come
no?
on.
All right. No, all right.
Now, let's stay on Israel if we can.
Okay, let's stay on. Let's stay on
There's
Israel.
a lot happening right now with Israel because, of course, Iran.
How do you assess the Iran threat? Do you think that? I mean, people say Netanyahu has said that as soon as the supreme leader gets a bomb, he's going to launch on Israel. Do you think that's true?
Well, I think that Israel right now assesses that we're in a different place than the United States assesses. They see that the capacity is there. And what they're saying is if Iran has the capacity, they're likely not going to issue a memo and tell the world when they're starting the development of that nuclear weapon, and especially as they move it below ground. But now we have credible evidence that's just come out on the Atlantic Wire. And it said that the Parshin facility that's southwest of Tehran now has very credible evidence that they're developing a nuclear weapon at this military site. So they're demanding that it be open. But actually, there's some things that Iran could do. If they are what they say they are, which is a peaceful developer of nuclear power, which, you know, that's a completely different matter. If they are, then why not surrender your enriched uranium? Why not stop all future production of enriched uranium? Why not close down the Fordo facility?
Because if you're a peaceful developer, you have a right to enrich uranium. The thing that Iran has to do, though, is to open their books.
The inspections. See, you said it.
They have to open their books. They don't have to turn over the
They don't allow continuous, rigorous inspections.
That's right.
And that gives the world pause. And you can see why the world would have pause. This is serious.
No.
What would happen in the Middle East if Israel, without asking us, makes a first strike in Iran's nuclear facilities?
Well, this is a world-changing event if Israel has to take that measure. And I think that's why you've seen so much discussion. I think Israel has tried to put this discussion on the world stage, but they're also trying to get the attention of allies to say they'd prefer not to go alone on this. But if they have to, if it's the survival of Israel, then they may need to.
But what kind of an ally would Israel be if it carried out a first strike without first telling the United States?
It could be an ally that sees a nod and a wink and goes, okay.
Yeah. I don't think that nod and wink is going to be there.
Think so?
The United States military is unanimously opposed to going to war over Iran. I mean, this is what I think is happening is I think that the Israelis are part of a grand strategy to put as much pressure on Iran as possible with the sanctions and everything else. And this is a big bluff.
But Joe, do you think that it's a fait accompli then that the Iranians are going to get a nuclear weapon?
They may, but I think that it's also possible that we're going to force them to the table because their economy is collapsing. And the domestic political situation is...
Well, we're running out of time, though. I mean,
I don't think we are.
They need to get to the table soon. And what I don't understand is why we don't put the sanctions on sooner rather than later. Why wait a couple of months? Because I think they will be effective. I think the sanctions will be very effective.
They already are.
But let's accelerate the timetable and get it moving, because I think that's what's going to get the Iranians' attention. This will change the dynamic of the world forever. Because remember what will happen. There will be proliferation. Saudi Arabia will work toward getting a nuclear weapon. Other nations will work toward getting a nuclear weapon, and Iran will share that weapon. Imagine if they share that weapon and the technology with Hezbollah, with Hamas.
Right.
You know, that's what the world is worried about. There is no containment at that point.
And Congresswoman, also, I think we all remember the morning we woke up back in the 1990s. I remember heading to Congress. I picked up the Washington Post, and we found out that the Pakistanis had a nuclear weapon. We've been talking about Afghanistan and the complications of Afghanistan since September 11th. That ain't happening because Karachi's a nice place to visit. That's happening because they've got a nuclear weapon.
General John Allen came into my office on Capitol Hill 2 days ago, and we talked about that and the dynamics that are changing on the ground with Afghanistan and Pakistan. You're exactly right, and it's something that we have to consider.
Nuclear weapon in Iran will haunt U.S. foreign policy makers for the next generation.
Congresswoman Michele Bachmann, thank you very much. Great to see you again. Joe Klein, thank you as well.
Thanks, Joe.
We'll be right back.